Staying up until 2 a.m. because you're behind on studying for all your classes is not the flex that you think it is. Everyone else is studying just as hard as you, and even if they're not, there's a group of pre-meds and other students out there who are getting better grades than you and they're studying way less time, so they're able to go to sleep and have friends and have an enjoyable college life. So instead of bragging about how much you're actually studying to your friends, how about you focus on finding the most effective study methods possible and being the most attentive while you're studying so that you can actually enjoy your college life as you're meant to enjoy it. So you never learn how to actually study effectively from your friends. And a story I have that kind of relates to that is when my friend, my roommate, my freshman year, he was in final season, like studying a ton for his econ exam. Like it was this big econ exam, and I think if he had done bad on it, like a B minus or lower, he would have gotten an A minus in the class, and he wanted to get all A's, right? As most people do when they enter college for their first semester. And so I remember he was spending so much time studying for like the week before the exam. He was just like out of the room the entire time. I didn't see him actually that entire week, basically, except for like 1 or 2 hours in the morning when he was coming to shower and get ready for another round of studying. And so he was studying for like 12, 14 hours a day. And just conventional advice would say that, hey, if you put in the work and you just keep working harder and harder, you're going to get the grades that you want. And again, he got a really good grade. Like he still got like a B plus or something or an A minus on the exam. But it was the fact that he had to spend so much time studying and studying and studying that led to the fact, just like the idea that he got a bad grade for how much effort he put in, right? Like if you put in that much effort, like to a point where you're studying almost 60 hours for an exam, 70 hours for an exam, then like yeah, I think it's fair to expect that you get an A or A plus even, or like the highest grade in your class. And yet I guarantee there were people in that class who studied a lot less than he did who also got really high grades. And so what I think a lot of pre-meds and students in general just don't realize is that the amount of time you put into studying is not necessarily the grade you'll get. Like the input is not equal to the output in this case. And when you're in that group where you don't really understand the most effective study methods or how to actually study properly, you just find it so difficult to predict basically what your grade is going to be based on how much you've actually studied. And so here's an analogy that sort of helped me understand this idea of studying. So imagine you have two people going to the gym, or I guess one person going to the gym, and they can either do cardio or they can do weightlifting, right? Both of them obviously have their benefits, so I'm not gonna say that that part of the analogy holds up. But the idea is cardio. Typically, you do it for a really long period of time, 2, 3, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, and you can do it really as much as you want because, in general, unless you're doing like crazy sprints or something like that, you're really like on a treadmill. You can stay on there for however long you want to at like a safe speed, right? And that cardio is really nice, but it's also really, really long, right? So it's lighter effort, but it's really, really long forms of exercising. Now compare that to weightlifting. So weightlifting, you're doing a really, really intense session. If you're doing it correctly, you do a really intense session of lifting weights. So you're lifting weights really heavy for like an hour, and then after that hour, like you're done doing your exercise for the day, right? And so I think this is a really useful analogy to why there's different forms of studying and why one form of studying, which is this like weightlifting type of studying of intense, like grinded out efforts for that 1 or 2 hours, and then really like spend the rest of your day recharging from that intense effort, compared to your cardio types. And that cardio exercise is like you're studying for long periods of time, you're prolonging it, but it's a lot less intense than what the weightlifting analogy is, right? Because if you're doing sprints, even like really intensely for cardio, you'd run out of energy immediately, right? But it probably get you the same amount of cardio as running for like a full hour. And so basically the point is that intensity trumps effort in most cases. And so I want to spend the rest of this video kind of explaining why I think that and how you can actually ratchet up your intensity so you're not spending so much time studying and you're still getting the same grades, if not even better grades than you were before. And you know what? Like a lot of people I've told this advice to think that I'm naturally smart and I'm naturally gifted, so I'm just able to study less for exams and still get great grades. I ended up with like a 3.99 GPA and basically all A's, maybe like 1 or 2 A minuses in there. But I can tell you that I was actually not naturally smart. So in like elementary school and middle school, I was just like failing like all my math classes, a couple of other classes because I just did not care. And like to be fair, when you're in elementary and middle school, I think you really shouldn't be caring as much about school as most people do. But in any case, I wasn't really doing my best work. I was just kind of floating along, not really studying. And in high school, I started cleaning up my act a little bit. I was like, I really want to get into a good college. And if I want to get into a good college, that means I have to start putting in more effort. And then I transitioned into that bucket where it was like I was one of the kids that was putting in hours and hours and hours of effort, and I was still getting really good grades, but it was kind of weighing on me a little bit, right? Because yeah, like I could just sit at my textbook and read for like 7, 8 hours before an exam, for like a AP biology exam, for example. And I knew that I'd probably get like an A or A minus or B plus, but again, it just felt so unpredictable and so hard to really just see like how my effort was translating into a grade. But when I came to college, that's when I really started to learn, hey, like I know how to actually study effectively. I'm going to learn how to study effectively so that I know exactly when I'm done studying and I know exactly how that translates over to my grade. And I really think that separates widely into three buckets that we just have in society in general, at least for students, I guess. For most students, like society tells you that busyness is the ideal, right? So you see this like even in the workplace, like just people working 9 to 5, trying to say that they're busy by like looking at email, looking at Slack, just being busy by appearing to be busy and not actually being busy and productive. And I think that idea of a proxy of productivity, basically the idea that people think that you're productive if you're showing that you're productive instead of actually how much you produce, which is literally the definition of productivity, is how much you produce, right? And I think people have, as society in general, has just like glorified the idea of showing that you're productive. And this really has trickled down to how people study and how people get shit done, right, in their work. And so I would say like 95% of the population, 95% of people in college are what I call poor studiers or bad studiers, for lack of a better term. And I'd say like these people are just ones that don't really study in the first place, or they're really inconsistent about their studying. Obviously, like certain universities, I'm sure like your Harvards or Yales or whatnot, this is probably a different distribution, but I'm going to say like 95% of just the general university population, student population, is not really good at studying. Like they don't really know how to study. They kind of just like reread lecture slides, reread notes, and stuff like that. And again, like some of these people get good grades, but their grades really fluctuate a lot, and maybe their grades aren't always the best or what they're hoping for. Then you have about 4% of the university population, and this 4% is focused on it's like these are the people who are getting amazing grades. So I'm sure most of you guys know people like this. I knew a ton of people like this too, who were getting really high grades. And this is kind of the danger of this bucket, because they were getting really high grades, but they were spending their entire life to get these really high grades. I remember just hearing so many of my friends, my pre med friends especially, who would be studying like 12 hours, like for 4 days before an exam. And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I don't think any exam really requires that much effort. I don't think anything in life, maybe I'll be wrong when I go to med school or whatnot, but I don't think anything in pre med life, at least, which I've finished up to this point, requires that much effort. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just mistaken about that and people think so. But 4%, I would say, are those people who give the most advice about how to study. And these people are like, oh, we should grind more. You should stay in the library super late. I would say be wary of this type of advice, because really the best advice is from the 1%. And I like to think I was part of that 1%, but I've met very few people who are like this, who actually prioritize having a balanced life, having a life where they're including so many other different activities, whether it's social activities, whether it's like exercise, whether it's like actually eating their meals, because some people skip their meals because they're so busy studying. Basically, making it so that studying is not the biggest part of their life. And for these are the people who are getting the amazing grades, but they're not really talking about it because it's kind of weird to talk about it. Like I know so many times where I've actually have talked about this, and I've gotten so much hate from my friends, and not even hate, just like incredulity. Like I just like the idea that people are really confused about what I'm saying, because I'm like, no, I studied like maybe like 5 or 6 hours for that exam, and I still ended up with an A. Now, again, maybe it's not like an A plus plus, 100% every single question right, but like it was still like 96%, 97%, and all my grades basically ended up being A's or close to A's. No B's, no B pluses, anything. And that's the crazy thing, is because I've noticed in universities now, especially UNC, which is where I go or where I went before I graduated, that a lot of universities are now emphasizing really good study techniques like active recall, like spaced repetition, like interleaving between different subjects while you're studying. And yet I still see this divide of like the 95-4-1, where it's like 95% is just like not really knowing how to study in the first place, and then 4% might even know how to study, like the best study techniques, and yet they still take a long time to study and they're not really like balancing their life, and then the 1% who just know like how to balance their life. And so it goes beyond study techniques, is what I'm trying to say. And you should really start listening to advice from this 1%, because I don't know about you, but for me, the best tips, the best things that I've experienced have not been from my studies or from preparing for exams. It's been from hanging out with my friends outside of exams. It's been going to walk around campus with my friends, or just enjoying my life, realizing that pre med is not the end of my journey and that I need to be as efficient as possible when I go on to med school and residency and becoming a doctor and everything else. Okay, so I've said in the previous section that study techniques themselves are not really what's differentiating this 1% and the 4%, who are still getting amazing grades but are doing it in different ways with different amounts of time, right? So, what is actually separating that 4% from the 1%? I think a lot of it has to do with attention or focus or intensity or whatever term you assign to the fact on how much deep, intensive, focused work can you do in a certain period of time. And so we're like actually so distracted as a society now. First of all, I think a lot of this is because obviously of social media, of phones, like just having our phones near us all the time. You don't need me to rehash this to you, but just having our phones, even visible, even not visible, you're always thinking about notifications. You're always thinking about social media. You're always thinking about like Netflix, a new show that's going on, Love Island. Like, I don't know, like everything that people think about. And again, like I'm not trying to say I'm better than you guys, because I'm not. Like, I'm so prone to these. I've been on my Instagram binges recently. Like, I've listened to music and podcasts and not really like taken in the world around me. And sometimes I feel like shit because of this. Like, I don't feel like my attention is as good as it could be. But I think that's like the obviously the biggest reason. I think it's just, there's so many companies that are trying to grab your attention, with so many other scientists who are just like nabbing, using like your inner psychology, your inner neuroscience to really just nab your attention and hold it so they can make more money. So again, like I'll go more into how to actually fix your attention, but like this is one of the biggest reasons as to why attention has been decreasing, like that ability to actually focus and do deep focused work. I think another more insidious thing is that there's been a lot of content these days that really emphasizes grinding and studying so much, right? And I've really seen this on some of my Instagram stuff, is when I see like this guy like put on like a timer for 12 hours or something, and he puts on a timer and he's like, I'm not going to get up from this chair until I'm done studying for that entire 12 hours. And to me, I'm like, when do we lose the plot over all this? Like, when did studying become such a big part of our lives that we had to devote this much hours, this many, just like this much of our time of our lives studying for an exam that you'll forget about like the day afterwards? I was just like, I don't want that type of life. And I think that honestly, this has really made it hard to strike a balance. And I think attention is really related to, do you have a balance in your life that's keeping you healthy, that's keeping your brain recharged, refreshed, and re energized? And this content, it encourages you to go on like drink a bunch of coffee, or even worse, like energy drinks that have all these shitty chemicals in them. And then suddenly you're exhausted and tired the next day because you only slept like 5 hours so you could study again. And so your attention is just terrible. Like, I won't say anything to you, even if you're doing that. Like, my attention would be terrible in that circumstance. I don't think anyone in the world would be able to focus if they were just like chugging energy drinks all the time, not being healthy, not walking around, not going out in nature and enjoying, not like doing any of these healthy habits that really just help us be human. Like, that's what we were meant to do. We were not meant to study, like sitting down and just like start studying. We were just meant to go around, enjoy our lives, have some type of balance between going outside, doing work that we're proud of, studying, like all that stuff has to be in some type of balance. And I think the rise of the content that has really promoted this grind set is detrimental, honestly. Like, this is part of the reason that people are stuck in that 4% or the 95%, where they're just doing so much work to get a good grade when it's possible to be better. It's possible to study less and still get the same results or even better results. And because of all this, deep work becomes impossible. And so deep work was this term coined by Cal Newport around 2015 or 2016 in his big book. Highly recommend everyone reads that book, because I think honestly, of all the books I've read, that's probably changed my life the most, or the second most or so. But that book basically expounds on this whole idea that doing the best type of work you can do is deep focused work. It's where you're kind of in that flow state where you just like so focused, so into it, and what would have taken you like 12, 15, 20 hours before takes you like 2 or 3 hours because you're just so locked in. And I'm not talking about locking in again, like just studying a shit ton over like 12 hours and just like sitting there with your energy drinks in your hand, like drinking it like that. I'm talking about people who actually study and do their work as intensely as possible. And they're just able to produce more. The whole idea of productivity, again, is to produce. They just produce so much more content, so much more stuff, so much more output from their limited time studying or doing work. Okay, so I want to introduce you guys to the study equation, which is something that has changed my life for the better in college and I hope in my future in med school too. And it's the idea that productivity equals time times intensity. So what does that mean? Let's say it takes 10 units of productivity to get an A in a class or in an exam. 10 units of productivity to get an A on an exam, and you can satisfy that however you want, but you're going to get an A if you get that 10 units. So then let's go through some scenarios. So first, you can always have an intensity level of 1. And if you multiply it to get to 10 units of productivity, you multiply it by 10 hours. So you can study for 10 hours at an intensity level of 1 and you're going to get an A, which sounds great. Like, fine. Like, that's honestly pretty low for most people, I would say. But, like, okay, fine, 10 hours. But what happens if you just ratchet up that focus level to 5? I'm not even saying anything crazy like 10 or like 20 or whatnot. Just 5. Like, you're more focused. Maybe you have your phone, like, hidden in your backpack. Let's say that ratchets you up to a level 5. If you're at an intensity level of 5 and you want to get to that 10 units of productivity, simple multiplication, you just do 2 hours of studying. And so suddenly you decreased by 80% how much you're studying. Like you're going from 10 hours to 2 hours just by rationing up your intensity level from 1 to 5. Now, obviously, in the real world, that doesn't like apply one to one, binary, whatnot. Sometimes it takes longer to study for an exam. But again, the whole idea is that your productivity is directly tied to the intensity level. It's directly proportional. And so if you increase your intensity level instead of your time that you're spending, then suddenly you're going to get amazing grades and you're going to be spending so much less time. And that's the equation that I really want you guys to put into your head. And intensity is related to the amount of focused attention that you have. And so let's figure out ways to improve that attention instead of improving the amount of time we're studying. And suddenly we're going to get amazing grades, less time. And that's the goal that I wish for you guys. By the way, if you're interested in content like this, then click the first link in the description. It's a link to book a free call with me so we can discuss how to level up as a pre-med and achieve your wildest dreams, whether it's a high MCAT score, high GPA, or just actually enjoying your life as a pre-med without having to grind like most of your friends are. So again, if you're interested in that, click the first link in the description. If not, let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, so how do you actually improve your attention? And so I'm going to give you some tips and strategies that have worked for me, with the whole focus being on that idea of deep work. And deep work, again, is that idea that you have such an intense, laser like focus on one task at a time that's really intensive, that might even mentally strain you beyond what you think are your limits, but that's just so focused to the point where you're getting so much output from a limited amount of input. And so that's the whole idea of deep work. And so one of the biggest ways that you can achieve this state is by removing distractions. And so that's like the biggest thing I can say is that instead of trying to figure out what else to add into your life to like achieve this free state, you really have to focus on what you're actually going to remove from your life or take away. And so for me, the biggest thing is a dopamine detox. In some way, get rid of your social media off your phone. Definitely get it off your phone. Like it should not be on your phone at all. You should not have Instagram or Snapchat or YouTube or any of these nonsense things on your phone. I would even say stuff like LinkedIn or more like professional apps like that. Like get that shit all off your phone. You can use it on your computer still, I guess. I like to go through periods where I just like don't use it for like 3-4 weeks at a time, or even sometimes I'll just like have it blocked off to one specific day. So like I'll look at Instagram, I'll scroll on Instagram Reels for like 1 or 2 hours on a Friday night when it's like least damaging, I guess, to me, because again, you don't really have class or exams to study for on a Friday night. You're typically going out and stuff. And so I would just say like that dopamine detox is so helpful for actually getting into deep work and getting into that state where you're able to improve your focus, improve your attention, and really increase the amount you're able to produce from a limited amount of time. To also help with that, there are things that can get you into that flow state or that deep work state so much faster. And so something for me is this idea of like a deep work initiator. And for me, for the longest time, that used to actually just be reading like an article about like some sports team. I don't know why specifically, but like I'm a big Philadelphia sports fan, so I would just like read an article about like the Sixers or the Flyers or the Eagles or Phillies or something, and I would do that. And if I read one article, again, sometimes like I'd read like multiple articles, but they're really short. It really just got me in that mode of like analytical thinking, I guess. Like I have no reason to explain why. Maybe it's just because I did it so many times before doing work that it just became a ritual. But for like most people, this is like just getting a cup of coffee, a small cup of coffee, and just like drinking that, or like setting up their desk in a certain way with like some lights on, a little lamp or something, so that they can get into that like state where it's like I'm need to work now. I'm not in a relaxation state, nothing like that. So I would say have a space set up. If you're not able to have a space set up, for me, like that was going to a library or something. Like I'd always go to the library on campus, and I would just sit there and like at a desk, I would read like an article on the sports team, and then suddenly I would just get into this intensive focus. I don't know. Like I have no clue why that worked, but just find something that's really like ritualized for you that you've linked to studying, whether it's going out to a library specifically, or even better, if you can make it something that you're able to do like quickly, just at the snap of your fingers, then do that if possible. It's like, go like make your favorite drink, like coffee or tea, and then put it on the lamp and then get started on your work. That should really help you get into that deep work state a lot faster than you've been able to in the past. I would also say being an early bird, especially for college students and college pre-med students who are watching this, is the most important way to improve your attention and to increase the amount of output that you're getting from your study time. And the reason I say this is not because early birds are like better than night owls, like the fact that most people are actually not night owls, which is true. Like most people are morning larks or early birds, and they don't really do well studying at night. It's just most people trick themselves into saying they've studied at night because they've never tried the other way. But the reason I say this is not because of that. It's more so because people who are studying in the morning just have less distractions around them. And so it goes back to that concept of just removing distractions from your environment. When's it more likely for your friends to be out partying or inviting you to stuff? Like it's going to be in the nighttime when everyone's just more lively, like all classes are done and there's just more fun stuff to do when it's dark outside, right? Obviously you guys know this. But instead of like trying to study in the night and just ruining your time or like either or even like getting your friends to come and study with you and like doing a big study group, I just feel like that ruins your vibe and like I don't know, like I don't want to use my nighttime to do stuff like that when I kind of just want to unwind and de-stress and just like enjoy with my friends or do anything else that's not school related. And so instead of doing that, then find a time in the morning where you're able to block off like an hour or two just to do that deep, intensive, focused work. And in addition to that, add those times between classes in your morning, especially, or even in your early afternoon, where you're just like doing a shit ton of work in those like little blocks. Like for me, a block of 45 minutes or 30 minutes between classes is a perfect time to get an assignment done or to study more for an exam or like knock out like a big deep work session. Because again, like if you're able to get into that state as quickly as possible, like it makes it so much easier to do intensive work even when you don't have enough like just big blocks of time. If you have small blocks of time too, this can really work. And it at the very least will cut down on the time you're spending outside studying. And lastly, I would just say incorporate activities that are really like helpful for you as a human being in the first place. Human beings are meant to walk around, we're meant to enjoy nature, we're meant to do a lot of stuff that we don't really get to do because we're sitting inside all day just like doing work or whatnot or studying. So I found like nature walks specifically without my phone, like all my phones, I just leave it at home honestly, and like I don't even bother taking it with me. And I'll just go on a walk with nature with nothing in my pockets. Like I'll just go out and freely like wander around, get lost in my thoughts, go talk to people that I see all across campus or in my neighborhood or whatnot. And for that, that just really helps me get into that mode of like I don't know, just like thinking about myself, like thinking about what I want to do in the future. It just makes me so much more happy and enjoyable to be around because like the sun is shining. It's like it's nice outside. Even if it's like raining outside, it's just like so nice to go outside and get these moments where you're alone and thinking to yourself instead of having some constant stimulation in your head, whether it be even studying for an exam or looking at social media or listening to music. Just having this lesser level of stimulation will really help you achieve that attentive focus because you'll be able to train your mind to really like get used to being bored. Like getting used to being bored is the best way to do this. Another way, again, is like mindfulness meditation. Just the idea that in the morning, every day, like spend 5 minutes, sit down, and just meditate. Just think about. like your breath, like focus on your breath right here, at your nose or like your mouth. Focus on your breath, and then don't actually like resist when your like mind's going different places. Your mind's going to wander. It always does for me, even though I've done it meditation for like 400, 500 days at this point. Your mind wanders to one topic and you just slowly bring it back. And eventually you'll get so fast at bringing your thoughts back to like the present or the focus, which is your breath, that you'll be able to use the skill in the rest of your life. Whereas when you're in that study state where you're like studying and then you're thinking about that party that you have to go to in the nighttime, instead of thinking about that, you're gonna realize that your mind is straying from the task at hand and you're gonna bring it back to your studying so you can get your studying done faster. And so these are a lot of tips that I personally have used to really increase my focus a lot. And honestly, I think I'm someone with ADHD or something like that, of undiagnosed. And just the idea that I really have not been able to focus, and I've always been a hyperactive kid, and I've always like not really been able to just sit down and sit still. And I've trained my attention span through these techniques and through just like really focusing on deep, intensive work to the point where I can sit for multiple hours at a time, just grinding out work and getting stuff done, whether it be for classes, whether it be for other tasks. And I just think this is so helpful for all areas of life. So really implement these methods as soon as possible. So getting into my results, I had no more of those like long study days where I was just studying for like 8 hours after school or after classes in a row every single day for an exam, for like a week or two. Basically, I wasn't studying like 50 hours for an exam. I was studying like 5 hours for an exam and still getting an A plus on the exam. Man, that feeling when you get to that point is just so nice, because what I have to say is, again, like it's not necessarily the study method that you're using that determines what grade you'll get. And like it doesn't even determine how much time you're spending studying. It's really about that idea of staying focused and locked in on what you're studying and just realizing that there are other ways to improve your performance. And just because you decide to use active recall or spaced repetition or whatever buzzwords you've heard online, if you're able to focus and really get your attention down to like the point where it's like a level 9 or level 10 all the time when you're studying, like your hours just drop so much. Like I went from high school studying 8, 9 hours for an exam, per day for like a whole week, and I'd be up to like 50, 60 hours studying for an exam, to the point where I just study like 5 to 10 hours at most for a college exam, and I'm getting better grades than I got in high school. And I'm still like having an amazing time just spending the rest of my free time doing extracurriculars or other important stuff for med school, or just even recharging and enjoying my life. Here's a question I want you guys to actually consider based on all of this that we've talked about. Do you actually know when to stop studying? Really ask yourself that question and really think about it, because for me, for the longest time, I actually didn't know when to stop studying, which is such a weird thing to say, because I think most people just think like studying is like this infinite event and it kind of just ends when you're taking the exam. But I refuse to believe that. Like I think studying ends when you set a specific point on when it ends. And so for me, that means doing all my practice questions that I've generated either from my notes or from practice problems in the workbooks that we get, and then B, taking a practice exam or two and just seeing how my results look. If it's like around the grade that I'm happy with, then I'm happy with it. I'm done studying. And that's really where I think a lot of people just don't know why they're going wrong, and like they're studying so much and they're still getting like fine grades or mediocre grades or even good grades, but just spending all their time studying, is because they don't know when they're actually supposed to be done studying. It's like you know when to start studying. It's a week before the exam or a day before the exam if you're like most people. And that's when you start studying, but you just end studying right before the exam even starts. Like how silly is that? Most goals in life have an, a start and an end. Like you don't just say, "Oh, I'm just going to keep making money until I'm rich." Like you say, "Oh, I want to get $1 million and then I'll consider myself rich." And that mindset of having an end point where you're actually like going to finish studying, where you're done prepping for your exam, and that's when you know you're done, is the mindset that you need to have, because all this intention is really good, like all this improving your attention, improving your focus. But if you don't know when you're supposed to stop, like you're still going to end up studying so much, even if you're studying the most effective way possible. The nice thing is that when your attention is really high, naturally your brain just can't handle like staying in that state for a really long period of time. And so maybe you're in that state for like 2 3 hours and you're just feeling exhausted, like you can't even look at your computer screen without like just seeing stars in your vision. Don't get to that point, but like I would just say, like, if you're really intensely like tired, that means you did most of your work for the day. And as long as you have like a certain set point. If you have high attention, like you'll achieve that set point usually within that 2 to 3 hours of studying in that day, and then you just keep going until you're done all your practice questions, until you've done all your practice exams, and then suddenly you're done. And that can be whenever you want it to be. Like it doesn't have to be 5 days before, or it doesn't have to be like 5 hours before the exam. It can be 5 days before the exam. It can be one day before the exam. I like to do it one day before the exam, just like have everything done by like noon that day, and then spend the rest of my evening relaxing. Again, like this has really helped me get amazing grades. I got a 3.99 GPA. I got a 523 on the MCAT. And more importantly, I was just able to actually prioritize recharging, resting, and engaging in a social life, engaging in that active recovery where I'm just, I don't know, like just feeling so much better about myself because I've had the opportunity to recharge my battery to the point where I can study intensely again the next day and I can still get amazing grades. And this just led to a really fun college experience because I never really felt like I missed out because of like studying for an exam. Like obviously there's certain points where it's like you have an exam at a certain time or you have like a study block at a certain time so you can't do everything. But like I don't think I really ever missed out on like a dinner with friends or going out to a party, even or just like other really fun stuff for me because I was studying. Like I just always figured out a way to fit my studying in around my social life, around my college life, or my extracurriculars rather than it going the other way and it taking over my life. And like I just remember so many experiences where I'd have an exam the next day and I would just go out to like a bar or a restaurant with my friends and be out there maybe a little late, maybe not sleeping the best. Don't sue me for that. But like, like staying out till like 10 p.m. and then getting back and having a really good night's sleep and just feeling so energized and refreshed to take an exam the next day. And I think I really saw this difference compared to a lot of my friends who might have spent that entire night studying for an exam and getting shitty sleep and not being able to go out with their friends who might not have exams at the same time and just I don't know. Like that's the life that I wanted and that's the life that I got. And I think a lot of you guys also want that life. And so again, follow the tips in this video and you'll start getting to that life sooner rather than later. So in conclusion, being exhausted is not necessarily the flex that you think it is. It's really a flex when you're able to say that you went out to a restaurant or a bar or you spent time with your friends the night before an exam because you're done all your studying by noon and you spent less time studying than all of your peers in your class while still getting the same grades as them. Focus on reclaiming your attention and recharging and resting more than you're actually spending or like focus on the time you're spending studying. And I think by doing this, you'll see so many improvements to your grades and you'll just feel better about yourself and really have that college life that you crave for. And I just want to give that to you guys because I think that's so important to have that balanced college life, just having so much fun in college because that's really what you're here for too. At the end of the day, you're not just here for academics and studying, although that's probably like 50, 60, 70% of it. You're also here to make lifelong connections with your friends and family and other people who will play an important role in your life to the day you die. So if you like content like this, then like and subscribe. Definitely leave a comment if you have other views or if you have agree with the stuff I said in this video. And if not, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.